these events are actually easy to put on because all these chefs are such professionals. So thank you, guys. Next panel, we have Jessica Waite, president of the Very Good Food Foundation. She's going to tell you a little bit about that. And the panel is Know Your Farmer, and fisherman, and Percebes harvester, and truffle hunter. Everyone talks about farm to table, but there's a new movement of really knowing your farmer and fisherman, and that's what this is going to be about.
Thank you so much for having us. And I mean, I'm president of the Very Good Food Foundation. I'm also a local restaurant owner, and I just have to say I really love the idea of an anti-convention. I feel like we can get a little punk rock and we can talk about the things that matter and be a little honest. And that's what this conversation really needs, is some honesty. Can you hear me okay? Is that weird? Okay, perfect. Building a better food system means building relationships. As a restaurant owner, I see firsthand the benefit of these relationships. Higher quality food, more creativity, and more passion. Synergy starts to occur between chefs and the producers they are working with. So in addition to talking about why farm to table is the right thing to do, about why it's hard sometimes, and why it's bad to lie about doing it, I hope we can touch on the evolution that takes place when these relationships are formed. This is a real opportunity to elevate cuisine, as well as to create a more resilient food community. So we have some serious legends on this panel, and I'm really excited to hear from all of you. I have to say that you are all my heroes. So we're going to start down with Hazel, and I hope you can just tell us a little bit about yourself and give us a hint as to where you fit into this conversation.
My name is Hazel Hernandez-Supple. I'm with Pacific King. We are a company that was founded in 2016. We began bringing in Percebes by 2017 from the northwestern Baja coast. Our focus was to stay sustainably and ethically focused, working very closely with the Mexican government, working very closely with marine biologists and the harvesters, the fishermen. We are successful at doing it, but we've had our challenges. It's an unusual product. It's a product that's been consumed by the Spaniard and the Portuguese for 10,000 years. Yet, here in the United States, it's still unknown. Let's talk.
Well, I haven't been this excited since the first week I was at Chez Panisse, and a guy walks in the back door of the kitchen holding a salmon. And it was a fisherman's mate from one of the boats, and of course he went on to own Monterey Fish Company. And then a few days later, this ancient hippie walked through the door and said, "I've got a basket of, would you buy my mushrooms?" I said, "Honey, I'd be arrested if I served those mushrooms. We can't get the whole restaurant stoned." And he said, "No, they're morel from the Berkeley Hills." And then I knew something was happening. But now it's really happened. I'm sitting between Truffles and Percebes. I nearly dropped, my jaw dropped when I just saw the Percebes. I've never seen them in the US before. They're goose barnacles, and they're unbelievably expensive in the northern Spain because it's basically a suicide mission to go and get them off the rocks in a winter Atlantic storm. Anyway, it's one of my favorite foods in the world, so thank you. Thank you. And we'll talk truffles soon.
Thank you very much, Jeremiah. It's an honor to be here with everyone. My name is Jason McKinney. I am the co-founder and CEO of Truffle Shuffle. Truffle Shuffle is an honest truffle company founded by chefs for chefs. Everyone that is a founder of Truffle Shuffle is a former chef of the French Laundry. We all worked at the laundry for 4 or 5 years and left, and basically we're upset with the status quo of what it takes to start a restaurant nowadays. And we believe that chefs are smart enough to get the money together to start your own restaurant. So Truffle Shuffle's goal is to create honest truffle practices and be the first company to start a restaurant with truffle money. Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks. My name is Farmer Paul. I'm a pasture bird poultry farm right here in San Diego County. I don't know what I'm doing on this panel, surrounded by legends. It's a serious honor. We farm pasture-raised chicken just about 45 minutes from here. Our story is 6 years ago, I was coming out of the Marine Corps, had really bad health problems, started eating better and feeling a lot better. And we started learning that a lot of the labels associated with meat production is really, really sketchy. Raised 50 birds in the backyard. That became 100, which became 200 and 500, and now we're selling to about 60 restaurants around California. Looking forward to it. Thanks.
My name's Tommy Gomes. I'm a local fishmonger for a company called Catalina Offshore Products, and what I do is I educate, promote, and have fun. And what I mean by that is I educate not only the front of the house, but the back of the house, and culinary students across San Diego County in full utilization of a whole fish, because fish doesn't come out of the ocean in a box, and we throw away the best parts. So we're trying to educate people on bringing that back and bringing back the family meal and all that. And one thing I'm going to leave you with is good seafood's not cheap, and cheap seafood's not good, and I want you to remember that. Know your source, ask questions, read the label, support the American fishermen, and quit putting garbage seafood in your body. Thanks.
Hi everybody, my name is Drew Deckman. I own a restaurant about 85 miles south of here called Deckman's. That way I know where I'm going every day when I'm going to work. I don't get lost. We're in the Guadalupe Valley, which is the Mexican wine valley. We only use wood-fired kitchens, so everything is produced right there on the ranch. We grow a lot of our own food. You know, our idea is not farm to table, it's bring the table to the farm. So we'll get into that a little bit more here in a bit, but it's an honor to be seated with everybody here.
Hello, I'm Farmer Lee Jones from the Chef's Garden in Huron, Ohio. We lost our family farm in the early 80s and started back over. We had the good privilege of being mentored early on by folks like Jean-Louis Paladin, Daniel Ballou, Alain Ducasse, Jean-Georges von Richten, Charlie Trotter, Thomas Keller, and they recognized our passion for farming and wanting to find a way to stay in farming, and they took us under their wing. And I just want to thank every chef that's here and every chef all over America. They've allowed us the privilege of following our passion of farming and growing vegetables and herbs and greens and the sexiest vegetables that we can find and grow for chefs. We ship direct from our farm to any restaurant anywhere. We go as far as Mandarin Oriental, Hong Kong, and a lot into New York and Chicago. Honored to be up here with such a great group of growers and fishermen.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, I think I'm doing this right now with the mic, so sorry for the feedback earlier. So I'm sure we all have an intuitive idea of what farm to table means. We are lucky to have on our panel a lot of great panelists, but also a chef who helped to catalyze this movement, 40 years ago? Chef Tower, can you tell us about how chefs sourced ingredients when you were first with Chez Panisse, and what it meant to begin building your menus based on what was local and seasonal?
Well, what I can say is that none of that existed then when I started. So the best local ingredient I had were the nasturtium flowers that I stole from a neighbor's garden, you know, because and I really want to say what an honor it is for me to be here today, because no matter how great a chef you are, if you don't have great ingredients, you're nothing. And the revolution has worked because of all of you guys now. It's really an honor to be here with you. So when I started at Chez Panisse, and I said the other day that everything that exists in Whole Foods today, or a year ago when it was great, did not exist. And the only decent fish, there was a guy in Monterey Bay, and I used to send my dishwasher down once a week to pick them up and put him up in a motel we couldn't afford and come back. And the Chinese in Chinatown for the rockfish. And otherwise, other than that, there was nothing. It was all frozen. In those days, a great restaurant had to have Dover sole, but of course that meant it was frozen. It had to have foie gras, but of course that meant it was pork fat and, you know, duck foie gras in a can that tasted like a can. There was nothing. So we just went scrounging and stealing the flowers, But we were scrounging. You know, to get a good chicken, there were none. At the same time as in France, there were fabulous chickens of all different grades. You know, a $5 chicken, a $21, a $50 chicken. And to get Americans to pay for quality is a great achievement, thanks to all of you. So, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but there weren't any ingredients. We had to grow them, catch them, get a farmer to grow them. So I brought seeds from France and got friends in Sonoma to start growing things. Arugula, no one had ever heard of it. You know. So the first foraging was in the neighbor's garden because they had a wall with nasturtiums hanging over. That was it.
I love that answer. And even though I know it's challenging sometimes now to operate based on these convictions, we think about what it must have been like for you back then and how much you pushed forward and how much easier people along the way have made it for us. And that's really remarkable. Farmer Lee, can you talk about creating the Culinary Vegetable Institute and how your relationships with chefs have shaped the evolution of your farming practices?
What was the last part?
How your relationships with chefs has shaped your farming?
Well, about 20 years ago, you know, early on, we wanted to get chefs on the farm so we could learn from each other. That symbiotic relationship of chef and farmer working together was really amazing. They were excited about what we were doing. They gave us energy and ideas and creativity to look for new things to grow. They wanted them grown for flavor. They wanted them grown without chemical. They wanted it grown for the quality and integrity of the product. So we were always trying to get chefs to come out. We would put them up in a hotel or a B&B, and my dad actually had the vision to build a place called the Culinary Vegetable Institute, and we built that 20 years ago. It was a bigger project than we could do on our own. We had help from chefs from all over the country that helped us build the facility. We have about 600 visiting chefs a year that come there. We do R&D and R&R. Chefs can go out into the fields, harvest product, come back in and play with it and do menu development. We had Jose Andres was there last year with 20 of his R&D team, and they spent 3 days, and they banged a book out while they were doing menu development. Professional photographer and a journalist there. Grant Achatz was there with his opening team before they opened Alinea. 7 years later, one of the guys that was on his opening team came back with his opening team, Curtis Duffy from Restaurant Grace. So it's really just a place where we can learn and share ideas with each other.
And how did you get on that path? Because it does seem, based on what I was reading, that there was a shift in your farming practices where you really started to work with chefs. How did that shape what you were doing?
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Kind of more like, how did that really propel the evolution of your farm?
It definitely propelled it. I mean, it's such a symbiotic relationship of learning from each other. And it's been amazing to see more producers come in, and, you know, I think that that's healthy. It's not a threat. I think it's great that we have more farmers now, small farms doing things and growing product. You know, there's an old saying that a rising tide raises all ships. And so I think it's just a beautiful thing. We're getting it. We're recognizing that we have to reconnect with where our food is coming from. We allowed a disconnect when the chain grocery stores came into play and the Walmarts, or even before the Walmarts. We allowed a disconnect in this country, and we lost our way with where our food was coming from. The chefs, like Jeremiah Towers and some of these guys early on that were pushing us and saying, we need quality ingredients. They started this revolution and have turned this thing around, and we're where we are today because of the likes of them. And it's so exciting to see Chef's Roll put this event on for us and to be able to have this conversation. And we've got to keep pushing that envelope. We're not there. We're only just beginning to reconnect that.
Thank you. Yeah, applause on that one. Kind of jumped in. That was from our chat yesterday. That was really what I wanted to hear you say because it's so meaningful. The only question that I had in addition to that is, do you think the current movement, this farm to table as we see it now, is bringing people closer to their food again? Is it successful?
I think it is. I think that, and I'm going to kind of let the elephant out in the room. You know, I think that local, the word local, is the most bastardized word since organic. It is spewed from people's mouths as if it's the next coming. And quite frankly, I think that it's a great thing that we started talking about it. It helped us get the conversation moving to reconnect where our food was coming from. I have a neighbor, and he's a great neighbor. It's the American dream. They came here from Italy. He went to work at Ford Motor Company. She became a registered nurse, but he came from a farming community in Sicily. He never really learned the English language, and he never learned to read or write very well. But it's the American dream. He came here from another country, and they did well. They raised a beautiful family. He wanted to have his 6-acre garden. He uses a lot of chemical. He doesn't have an applicator's license. So he'll go to anybody that's got an applicator's license and get them to buy chemical for him. And quite frankly, he sprays the shit out of his apples. I wouldn't feed them to our horses. That being said, he's local. Local defines a distance. It does not define quality or integrity of product. Thomas Keller just came out with an article about 3 weeks ago really challenging the whole local movement. Look, if you can get something in your backyard and you can use it direct, absolutely. About 2% of what we're consuming in the United States is produced by guys like us. We have massive amounts of product coming in from third world countries where labor's $1.50 a day. Okay, that's a problem. So we have a movement. Let's build partnerships with people with like-minded philosophies rather than get wrapped up on a 50-mile radius or a 100-mile radius or a 150-mile radius. So that's my speech.
No, I love your speech. And
okay.
It kind of, yes, all of this is amazing. I think the real point then is this is based on relationships, because Chef Drew, you're very focused on local, and what I believe, based on our conversations and everything I've witnessed from learning about your restaurant, you're doing it absolutely the right way, and it's really shaped your businesses from what I can tell. I mean, how has your culinary career evolved based on these principles, and what do you think the current farm-to-table movement looks like, and what should it look like? It's a lot, sorry.
It's a lot, right. Okay, a little bit about how I got to here. I spent 10 years in Europe. I have a degree in philosophy, which is as useful as what, I learned how to boil water, basically. And spent 10 years in Europe cooking. I was in France, Germany, and Switzerland. Finishing my time in Germany, I was a chef in a hotel in Berlin, and I think at the end of the time there, I had 85 different purveyors. So 85 different farmers, things, one guy just brought me asparagus, one guy just brought me a certain kind of potato, one guy just brought me a certain kind of herb that grows along his fence line. And when I came back to this part of the world, that seemed excessive to anybody that I talked to. It seemed extraordinary. How can you make so many phone calls or make so many emails or, no, we need to call, the big truck guys, and that's one delivery, and we're done. You don't know where the food's from. You don't know what the person's name is that's growing it. The fisherman doesn't have a face. The rancher doesn't have a face. And that really got me to move slowly toward really creating the food culture that I lived when I was in Europe, when I was living in France, when I was living in Geneva, where local was important because they were our neighbors, not because, I totally agree with you. Words like local, farm to table, natural, they've all become so diluted. When fast food restaurants have chef-driven menus, we have an issue. There's a problem. And so the best way for me to be local is to grow my own food. I'm in a very privileged place where we're on a 2,500 acre operating ranch. We don't use chemicals. We're not certified organic. We don't care about the word. The ranch has been owned by the same family since the late 40s. The original parcel was 25,000 acres. They planted the olive grove that's in Guadalupe Valley, if you're familiar with that. They came from France and Switzerland post-war for the carob and olive trade. That's how they started. Now we're an operating vineyard, winery, and we grow our own food. We have sheep, we have cows on the property, we keep bees, we make olive oil from the olives that grow on our ranch. What we don't produce the guy next door does, or the person on the other side of the valley does. It's not because we're trying to be local, it's because the best product I can find is growing next to me, or I'm producing it. So our menus change based on our garden, not based on anything else. Ensenada is one of the most important seafood receiving ports of the entire west coast of Mexico. So we are next to Baja Shellfish Farms. And if anybody went to the dinner last night, you were able to try some of the oysters, phenomenal oysters. What do you mean, Mexican oysters? You don't even drink the water there. No, these are Mexican oysters. This is awesome. World-class product. The striped bass that you may have tried here for lunch. Incredible. It's not about using words or talking the talk. There's so much greenwashing. It's about doing it. And doing it for the right reasons, not because it seems trendy or it seems like, oh, well, that restaurant's saying that, we better put that on our menu. I mean, how many times, Paul, have you seen somebody put pasture bird on their menu and they've never bought a chicken from you in their life?
All the time.
All the time. So it's all about what you're doing. Walk the walk. The talk doesn't matter. Anybody can do that. Social media, we can all talk. I can tell anybody that I'm doing something right now and it's all bullshit. Do it. You'll taste it. It's in the food. And that's why I say that we're table to the farm. Instead of being someplace else, why not, badgers are very smart animals. They set up their homes inside the prairie dog farm, the prairie dog towns. That's smart. Go to where your food is, right? So produce it. Even if you're growing herbs in your windowsill in your apartment, you're still growing your own food. That connection to putting your fingers in the dirt is primal in our existence as Homo sapiens. And I think it's absolute key to reconnecting and reconstructing our broken food system.
I absolutely agree, 100%. It's heaven to hear this after so many years of frustration, and I'm sure a lot of people feel this way about the state of our food system, and to hear these words about the quality of the food, and it's phenomenal. Thank you. And I wanted to circle back to Chef Tower, if that's all right, and just ask, based on this and your perception, where do you feel we are in this evolution toward embracing local food now?
Well, let me talk about the words for a minute. Somebody says, I'm a purist. I run a mile. And I said, but can you cook?
Yeah.
They say organic. And I said, well, is there Roundup within 100 miles of where you're raising the food? I have the best chicken. I said, well, do you use bulldozers to harvest them? It's not the talk. It's the walk and the proof of it. You need to see the product, because then it doesn't matter what they've told you. You see the product, you cook it, you taste it, and then you make a contract and you deal with them. Going back to the first time was at Chez Panisse was a French, regional cooking bistro. So I thought I had to cook cassoulet, but cassoulet, a real cassoulet of geese. I couldn't find a goose anywhere in California. So I went and bought some goslings, put them in my dining room for a week, took them up to a farm in Sonoma, went back 6 months later, picked up the geese, made the confit, and then, about 9 months later, we had cassoulet. And everyone said, you expect me to pay $10 for beans? It should have cost $100 for that dish after all the trouble I'd gone through to be local and pure and authentic. All of those words used to mean something that don't mean anything now. So, what was the question?
Not quite sure. I'm just curious, because there is this bastardization of the farm-to-table term, and so many restaurants are kind of doing it in a way that might not be as authentic as had you looked ahead at that point and hoped. How do you feel overall about the progress we're making?
Well, look at the progress here.
Yeah.
In a few months we're going to have chickens that have been fed on truffles.
It's working on it. We're working on it.
They're going to cost $250 a chicken, but that's okay, And we were wondering what the eggs are going to taste like from that chicken. So the proof that it has worked is right here. The danger, the revolution has worked, and it's worked way too well. So each chef now has pages and pages and pages of, decent or fabulous ingredients, depending. The question is, do you as chefs have the discipline to read through those lists and not be tempted to use them all at one time? My advice is, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, so moving on, I think I'd like to go through some of the other purveyors on the panel because everybody's doing something really unique and impactful right now. And if they can just tell a little of that story, I'll start with Tommy. And why do you think it's important for a chef to develop a relationship with their local fishmonger or fisher person?
I got to stand up for this.
Yes.
So people save their pennies to come to this town to eat your food. Think about that. People save their pennies all year long to come to San Diego, California and eat your food. So don't serve them crap. Know where it's coming from. Ask questions, know your source, get in the game, because there's plenty of other people that are not doing it. It's important to build relationships with your farmers, with your fishermen, with true fishmongers. We're not hard to find. There's only a couple of us in San Diego. True fishmongers are very rare, just like today's farmers. My specialty is seafood. I'm a fifth-generation fisherman. My family's been in San Diego for over 130 years in the industry. I know a little bit about the ocean. Build the relationship and know the source and ask questions, because in today's world with seafood fraud, which is happening, we're selling tilapia as snapper. We're selling escalar as white tuna. We're selling defrosted, slacked out as fresh. You gotta stop. You gotta stop and ask the question, why? Wild seafood is one of the only proteins that we do not manufacture. We've all seen the big cattle ranches, we've seen the huge pig farms and all that. Wild seafood, we go out, we risk our lives. The minute we leave the dock, we worry about three things: fire, sinking, and catching fish, and it's in that order. Even if you catch fire, there's a lot of water around the boat, you can't put it out. Weird things happen. Know your source, ask questions, go down to the docks and talk to the fishermen. Keep your money here in San Diego, because if your seafood has more miles on it than you drive in a month in your car, you're part of the problem for our local American fishermen. Makes sense. So figure out where your fish is coming from, because seafood fraud is alive and well. Trust me. I've seen it. I fished all over the world, worked for a whole bunch of different companies all over the planet. If you can find your artisanal farmers, your chicken ranchers, your truffle guys that are doing the right thing on a smaller scale, that's a hell of a lot better protein than buying it from these massive farms. We still need those big companies because we have to feed the masses, but know your source. One way I like to put it for the younger crowd, the younger chefs that are coming up, you mentioned it earlier about the word local. For me, I have a hard time using the word chef, because to me that's a time-honored tradition, and it's honored to have that. And so what I see is, I see a lot of people coming out of culinary school being called chef, and I have a hard time with that because I'm old school and I'm just old. If you're driving a new high-performance car and you pull up to the gas station, you don't put cheap fuel in it, right? You put the high octane in it because it won't run right. So quit putting shit in your body because your body's not running right, and quit feeding it to our people that come here to visit San Diego.
I have a quick question, if I may.
What's that?
Why, I've wondered this ever since I started cooking, but not so much, this is not a restaurant question, it's a customer question. Why is the retail, I think part of the problem was seafood, trash seafood in the United States. Why is the retail fish so poor quality? Now you go to Barcelona, Madrid, Paris, anywhere, And you go in the middle of Paris, there's a fish store, and the fish is brilliant, beautiful. Barcelona, it's still walking around, you know. Why is it I have never seen great retail fish in the United States?
Well, you got to come to Catalina offshore.
That answers that question.
Because by the time it gets to the consumer here in this country, it's been handled so many times, reboxed. Sometimes it's been frozen whole, slacked out. You know, there's all these little tricks of the trade that they've been playing over the years. And the American fishermen are the next endangered species in our seafood chain. We're being forced right out of the business with rules and regulations, but yet we are the most regulated fishery on the planet, the American fishermen, and we're dying. We're a dying breed. Chevis from Santa Monica mentioned earlier that it's now cool to be a commercial fisherman, and he's 100% right. But we skipped that generation. There's a whole generation that we missed. The average commercial fisherman here in San Diego is over 60 years old. And we don't know where our future lies, but our future lies right here in this gallery to go out and educate people at homes and in restaurants and your visitors that come to this town about where that fish comes from. Every single fish has a story. There's a history and tradition and a love and a romance of the sea that we need to share. And they touched base on it with the sustainable panel earlier about farmed fish. Not all farmed fish is bad. Not everything is a Frankenfish out there, you know? There's some great companies that are moving forward. And if the big fish eat the small fish, how come here in this country we don't eat the small fish, but we want a 4-ounce piece of fish, bloodline out, skin off, no bones, and we don't want it to taste like fish? That's a piece of chicken. Go see him.
Thank you, Tommy.
Right? So, and if you get a bone, you know, use it as a toothpick, for crying out loud. Fish have bones.
Yes.
It's okay. Play with your food. Remember when you were a kid? Don't play with your food. Don't play with your food. Guess what? You're adults now. You get to play with your food. Eat the whole fish. I don't know about you, but I remember my old man, Chef, I'm sure you did it back in the day. I remember my old man ripping open a can of sardines, and we're on a fishing boat, and my dad's eating cans of sardines. I said, Pops, we got all kinds of fish on the boat. Oh, but the sardines are better for you. Now I understand what he's saying.
Thank you. No, I know you do, and I have a special spot in my heart for you, because when we first opened our restaurant, it was you coming up there and supporting the heck out of us, because you knew that we were trying to do what you believed was the right thing. And so I've always been so grateful for that relationship, because that's how you build. I mean, my husband and I came out of the gate with nothing and tried to build a restaurant, and you helped us, and you were right there along the way, supporting us and showing us the right product to be serving. And so preach on. I'm so grateful for you. I'd like to talk to Hazel for a couple minutes if possible, and maybe just have you talk a little about the product that you're offering, because we had the opportunity to sample that today and it was phenomenal, but there's still kind of a learning gap.
Yeah, I would say our greatest challenge is all of you. We can't get it to you because a lot of you are afraid of it. You've never seen it. It looks different. It's not an easy sell.
It is pretty ugly.
It is ugly.
It is one of the most delicious things in the whole world.
I don't need to talk anymore.
No, go ahead.
This is a man that knows. He's traveled the world. He knows Percebes. He was thrilled to see Percebes. I think it was a very nostalgic moment for you. He knows what it takes to bring it in from the sea.
Tell me about the video.
I'm sorry?
Tell me about the video.
We've taken videos. If you go online, you could see what it takes in Galicia, Spain. They will spend their fortune for Percebes, 120 to 200 a pound during season, the high season. It is regulated by the government in Spain and Portugal, in British Columbia. The Mexican government is allowing it. It took 2 solid years of studying it with marine biologists, making sure that we had a very strong focus on being ethical and sustainable, maintaining that ecosystem, working very closely with the government. We bring you a quality product. We've worked very hard to be able to cross it, working with the FDA, Fish and Wildlife. When it hits your table, you know it's a good product.
Tell me what it takes to harvest it.
I got a great coach here. Harvesting is one of the most difficult things to do. It's along the reefs, it's along the cliffs on the coast. The more thrashing the wave, the stronger the percebes. But to get to that cliff, to get to that point, fishermen are thrown back into the sea, people die. It is probably one of the most dangerous harvesting activities. And that's why when it hits your table, it's going to cost you. But you're going to have something different, something innovative. You can prepare it from just simply flash boiling it with laurel leaf, with a little bit of butter, some white wine. It can be served with beer, paired with any type of wine, a cocktail. You can serve it from a tapa all the way from a complex entree. Sky's the limit, but you're afraid of it. You don't need to be afraid of it. Distributors have been reticent with us because they're saying it's too much work to educate the chef. You want something different. You want something delectable. It is one of the greatest delicacies in the world in regards to Spain and Portugal. They will kill for it. And yet the government limits the amount they can take out of their waters. So here you have it. It's available. Experiment. Be innovative.
For one of my birthdays, I flew to northern Spain just to eat percebes. So, you know, I mean, raw, there is nothing I've ever eaten from the ocean tastes more like the fresh Atlantic winter storms, the ocean, than a percebes. And cooked, they're wonderful as well. But I mean, if I'm willing to fly from San Francisco to northern Spain just to eat percebes, that's how much I think they are brilliant.
Thank you, Hazel. And
Thank you.
it sounds like, so the recurring theme here is just building these relationships and strengthening these ties and educating. How have you been working to educate chefs? I know you integrated today, but...
We've had to do a lot of one-on-one visits. We have done special pop-ups where we invite chefs from the community. We'll sponsor 50 chefs in a night, you know, give them everything to eat and drink, and teaching them about it. That is how we've had to get out there, because the distributor has been very, as I said, reticent to really take it out to market for us. We've had to do a lot of the work, going direct to the chef, and that's a lot of work. It's not efficient to get it out to the chefs so they have something different.
It really kind of hits on how much power the culinary community has to really shape the market. And that's, I mean, we can't wait for the big corporations to do this for us. We need to propel this on our own. So I think it's a very teachable moment. I'm going to move along just so we hit everybody, and then we can dive into more questions, because every bit of this is so interesting. Paul, can you tell us a little bit about your operation and your emphasis on transparency?
Yeah, I'd love to. So about 6 years ago, my family decided the labeling in the meat industry was complete bullshit. It took us about a year of buying these fancy free-range and organic and cage-free and all this stuff until we really started to look into it. And we found the ugly truth. The fact is, organic chickens are factory farm, free-range chickens, 99% have never actually been outside. Antibiotic-free chickens actually had antibiotics their entire life. And we were paying a lot of extra money for this stuff, and it just bothered us. We started raising animals in a way that was just meant to feed our family. It was never meant to be a business. I never grew up farming. I never thought about any of this. I don't have any connections in this industry. It was just good food for our own family. And it was really raised in a way that we were proud of and we could show off. We have the distinct advantage of not being down in Mexico or being in Ohio. I'm 45 minutes from here, and so from the beginning, it was really important to us to open up the farm. And so you can go talk about labels till you're blue in the face, but at the end of the day, for us, it's come join us on the farm. Come walk the field with us. Come see the animals in their actual environment, in their habitat. We've got nothing to hide. We're not perfect. We're far from it. But we absolutely want to show off what we're doing and what nature's capable of. When you walk out and you see, today chickens are eating purple wildflower, the painted lady butterflies that are coming through. By the way, chickens are not vegetarians. They never were meant to be. And you can see that and you really know what you're buying. It's a really, really important, impactful thing, not only for the chef, but ultimately for everybody on your team. We have chefs bring out dishwashers and line cooks and everybody because it's close. And it's an unbelievable team building experience, know exactly where your product's coming from. And ultimately, the goal is to actually educate the consumer, the person that's eating that plate in your restaurant. And so lots of you guys that are in the audience today have been to the farm, and I'd totally encourage you, not just to ours, but go talk to your protein producers and ask to see the farm. If they say no, that's a giant red flag. Be very, very careful.
Thank you so much. One of the things I thought was really cool about our conversation was, yes, that does deserve applause, amen. One of the things I thought was really cool about our conversation was that you admitted that sometimes it's not feasible for chefs to get out to the farm, because I'd heard that as an argument so many times, like I work for this big restaurant, I can't go to the farm. And you've taken steps to kind of bridge that gap and meet them halfway. Can you tell us a little bit about how you've done that?
Yeah, we were a little, we didn't understand how this worked. We didn't grow up in the industry. So it's really easy to get frustrated and go, oh, the chefs won't come out to our farm and buy our fresh chickens that we harvest. And you can sit there and you can spin your wheels on that forever, or you can learn the way that the game works. And so we've worked really hard to get fresh processing every single week, work with a few distributors that we really trust, and still put an emphasis on having people out. We've had almost 20,000 visitors out to the farm in the last 5 years. So I say, forget organic and free range. Like, trust the 20,000 people and become one of them that's actually been out. But yeah, I think it's on the farmer to make it more convenient to the chef, but it's also on the chef to search for foods that may be a little less convenient, and we got to meet somewhere in the middle.
Absolutely, thank you. And since we've talked a little bit about local, what were your thoughts on your local question? Like, do you think it's better to buy that chicken down the street, or basically based on the conditions of the farms?
Yeah, if you have a farm right down the street, if you live in Fresno and there's 40,000 birds walking on top of each other, shitting all each other and pumped full of antibiotics, I'd rather go 500 miles down the street and get good stuff. I'm quality first, I think local second. They're both important, but I think quality is more important.
Thank you. All right, so now we have Truffles. I'm so excited to hear what you have to say about all of this. We spoke for a few minutes, but Jason, you have a really unique business model. Can you tell us about how you got started and how you are working to increase transparency in the truffle industry?
Absolutely, and thank you very much, Jessica. It's, again, an honor to be up here with this panel, some legends up here, and thank you, Chef's Roll, to kind of give us the platform to talk about why a bunch of chefs left from working at a very wonderful restaurant to opening and starting and running a truffle company on our own. And for myself, I'll just speak to my story a little bit and really kind of just talk about my team. I share a very deep affinity with Tommy and Hazel up here, as I first really learned to care for ingredients as the fish butcher at the French Laundry. And when I first started learning how to butcher fish, I would, whether I was at the restaurant taking care of the product, which is between 14 and 18 hours a day, I'd come home, I would watch fish butchering videos, and I've actually watched a lot of Tommy's, so thank you very much for that. And then if I was sleeping, I was dreaming about what it takes to really butcher that fish perfectly. And so I really developed this kind of obsession with ingredients, and at the restaurant, there was one day we're going to close down for a little bit, and it was about 3 months, I just got there, and I'm like, man, I got to figure something out, otherwise when we open back up, I'm probably going to be gone. And so I wrote out this whole road trip to visit every single purveyor at the restaurant, and I brought it to the chef, and I showed it to him, and he's like, wow, that's really cool, let's talk tomorrow. The next day, he says, instead of going and spending 30 minutes with each purveyor, why don't you go see the ingredient? And as a young cook, I was like, what is the ingredient, chef? And he's like, truffles. Go see winter truffles. And he said that, something clicked in my head, I went home and just became absolutely obsessed with truffles. And as I found, what most people know is that the truffle industry is just ripe with fraud. It's an unbelievable black market industry. And so I always had that in the back of my head, and when I left the restaurant, like many chefs do, we went out into the world and we're like, okay, let's start our own restaurant. And the current method of getting a restaurant going does not have the upper hand for the chef. And we're like very upset with that, and we looked at it and it was like, what can we do to get enough money together to start our own restaurant, to put our restaurant, our money into the restaurant for us to be the total founder of the restaurant. And if you look at it, you have Truffles, right? And you have millions of dollars of people, you have people making millions of dollars off of Truffles by lying to chefs. And you have chefs begging for money to open up their restaurants. So that is the status equation that we are trying to fix. And once we got into it, what we learned is you have honest, unbelievably hard-working truffle hunters, whether they're in Italy, whether they're in Croatia, whether they're in Romania, whether they're in Spain, Australia, going out every day, working very hard, taking care of their land, taking care of their dogs, to get the product to where it needs to go. And then on the opposite end of that, you have chefs that receive the product and do everything in their power to make sure that the guests that come into their restaurant that are trusting them with a large amount of their money for that dinner tonight, that they prepare the best experience possible. And so in between that, in between these hardworking hunters and dogs and the chefs working as hard as they possibly can to serve this product, you have individuals that have come in and have taken the market share of the industry to benefit themselves. Hunters do not make a lot of money in this process. Currently, chefs are overpaying for these ingredients, and so what we've done is we came in, we knew it was a little suspect when we started, but after starting this, we're like, oh my God. And there's a lot of information that we have gotten that we cannot talk about yet, and there's a lot of scientific research that we have that backs everything we're doing. We're actually the first and only truffle company that is paying for scientific research into truffles specifically to support chefs, to get all the information possible on how to store truffles, how to treat truffles, how to harvest the truffles, to get the most flavor out of it and preserve the shelf life. And with that aside, essentially what we found once we got into this is that you look at truffles and you look at where truffles come from. And truffles are our brand. You have Italian truffles, you have black winter truffles, but behind the branded truffles, there's 48 different varieties of truffles. And kind of my challenge or question to you is, once we set up our online presence, every day, I've had 4 today, of people reaching out with these very, very suspect offers. I have 40 kilos of Iranian truffles I will sell to you for 30 euros a kilo. My entire time cooking, I have never heard of Iranian truffles. Once people recognize that I was a distributor of truffles, they try to sell me everything, but they don't know that I'm a chef, and they don't know that I'm doing this to protect chefs. And so just to speak to that, when that happens, you have two kind of ways you can go about it. You can completely ignore it, or what we did is we started to get small samples of the product in. And you have these truffles, right? On their own, they're fine. They are the button mushroom of truffles. They are not the cep, they are not the morel, they're the button mushroom. They're excellent for stock, for purees, and whatnot, and we offer those. If you would like a simple, cost-effective truffle to serve in your restaurant for a stock, whatnot, no problem. We'll be completely honest about where it's from, how we got it here, and what the potentials of it are. Behind that, you have the paragords and the melanosporum, the tuber magnatum, the stunners of the show. And what we have found is by actually setting up an honest distribution system, we can supply a better quality product to the chefs at a better price point. If you take a truffle from Croatia and ship it over a boat and then drive it to the port of Italy and ship it from Italy to America and ship it to New York and then go from New York to San Francisco to Texas, that's 7-8 days that product's out of the ground, the quality's less, you have to pay shipping costs on every end. What we do is we get the product from the source, If it's coming from Croatia, we tell you that it's coming from Croatia. We get it directly to San Francisco. We ship it we route all of our truffles from where they're at in Europe to Spain. We have customs agents in Spain. We have customs agents in San Francisco. It comes directly to us. That way we have the same people we're working with every single time on this. It comes directly to us and we get it directly to you. All of our truffles we get out of the ground in our hands in 16 hours. And so by being brutally honest about the products, about the ingredients, we're actually able to save chefs thousands of dollars on these products that honestly, I mean, I'm a chef, everyone up here is doing this for a purpose in life. Everyone that's in the audience has a purpose in life, and that's to create an experience. And for us, truffles are that experience. And so we are unbelievably proud to sell the truffles that we do, work with the people that we do, to help people have that experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Can I ask a question? So a great ingredient is only so good as it comes in the entrance, the receiving door of a restaurant. After that, they can just go to hell really quickly. So I'd like to ask you three gentlemen in a nutshell, especially fish. Stephen, we talked about it forever. How do we keep fish for a day or two? Chicken and truffles. How do you, once they're in the door, what do I do as a restaurateur to make sure that by the time it gets to the cook, it's the quality that you expect me to serve?
So the minute that fish comes out of the water, the fishermen are going to take care of it with what we call candy and kid gloves, because they have to bring in the best quality that they can in order to get the best dockside market price. Seafood prices on the dockside to the fishermen are up and down all the time, yet everything's gone up. Fuel, boats, vessels, permits, and all that. The best thing that you can do is when you immediately get seafood from your vendor, and to keep it fresh, is to take it, rinse it, repack it, and keep it cold.
Yeah, but in an ice slurry with plastic on top and ice on top of the plastic and a drain. I mean, tell me how I want to keep my fish.
Depending on the species, an ice slurry will work, or just keep it in a crushed ice or shaved ice. Cubed ice, not so much, because it has a tendency to melt faster because there's more air flowing through it, where if you have crushed ice, you can pack it in there. Now, fillets, you know, I see it a lot of restaurants that are just, I mean, you got ticket after ticket, you're cranking out seafood, you don't have time to break down fish, and I get it. So if you're getting seafood that's already broken down, it's coming in a 5-pound box or a 2.5-pound box and it's fresh, take that fillet out, rinse it off, pat it dry, and wrap it in a paper towel, and then stack them on your, what is it, a sheet pan? I'm no chef. A sheet pan, and keep it cold and keep it in a refrigerator. Come on, Drew, you know I'm not a chef. Barely boil water, man. The fishermen take care of that fish with candy and kid gloves because they need to get the best price possible. And so with all our proteins that we raise from small farms, from artisanal farms, from truffles to all that, take care of that and honor that. Honor that tradition that we're bringing back. Honor the tradition that we're bringing back when it comes to our food, and pass that on to our kids to teach them about good food. Now, there's nothing wrong with a burrito every now and then in Southern California, because, you know, it's one of those things.
If you guys can,
in France, in America, you put a chicken, you cover it with saran wrap and put it in the fridge. In France, they don't ever cover them.
No, I was just going to say, we've only got like 2 more minutes, and I'd love to do everyone's closing remarks, but this is too good of a question not to answer, so go for it.
Well, mine's really quick, so it's really hard for us. We're competing in a space where a small farm in California kills about 1 million birds a week. So we had to get to the point where we could get at least 300 chickens every week so that we could actually have a fresh harvest coming out every week for the chefs. We see a lot of guys using a brine, so we see a lot use a saltwater brine. When an animal grows much slower, it's going to have more flavor, it's going to be a little bit more tough. So the saltwater brine's an ancient method that a lot of our chefs are using just to tenderize it a little bit. Just please don't use pool water, that chlorinated, nasty tap water that you get here in Southern California. Find some good water if you're going to brine my chicken, please.
And to keep this very short for Jessica, as I was speaking earlier, the scientific study we're doing, a guy I worked with at the laundry trained under Ali Bazari and was nominated for the Oxford Scholarship with Harold McGee. We have hired him to do this study. he just gave us kind of the first feedback. The first thing we wanted to look at is how do you care for truffles? It's actually pretty crazy. Every day a chef asks, what is the best way to keep a truffle? Because no one really knows, because it's a living bacteria, you know? And I have all of the information. We just had dinner with Harold McGee. We ran some of this information by Harold McGee. He was very excited about it. He gave us a thumbs up. We're going to have a booth at 3. I have all the information. It's up on our website. So anyone wants to come by and we can chat about everything. Real simple to the point. You want to wrap them with non-bleach paper towels, put them in a wooden box, store them colder. You actually store white truffles a touch warmer than you store black truffles. And just come by the booth and we can talk about anything you want to.
Thank you so much. And I'm looking through my list of additional questions, and we've covered so much on this panel, and I'm so grateful for all of you. But I want the opportunity, if anyone has anything else they'd like to share on the subject. A couple of us haven't been able to speak for a little while as we've gone through. So is there anything else that's bubbling up?
The only thing I would leave you with is that every day we vote. We have the ability to change the marketplace. We vote every day with our dollars. When you buy a Coca-Cola, sorry to throw a brand out there, you're voting that you're totally in agreement with government subsidies, corn syrup, all these things that are behind that soft drink, you're voting that you agree with it. We vote every day. Vote with your fork and vote wisely.
All I can say is don't eat foreign tilapia and don't eat swai. Please.
Jessica, thank you. You did a beautiful job. This group of people, I wondered how you were going to manage us. It's like herding wild cats. Chef's Roll, thank you for giving us this opportunity to move the needle. If we go back to a 30,000-foot level and look at what's going on, we're making a difference. Quality is always going to rule. Build these relationships. We're smarter working together than we are individually. Thank you, Chef's Roll. Thank you for letting me be a part of this panel. We're moving the needle. Stay our course. Keep on the path. We're moving it. We're making a difference. Thank you.
Any other final words?
Just keep on stepping out of the box. Step out of the box, move the needle, experiment, be innovative. Call us.
Right on.
Yes, thank you, Jessica. Awesome job.
Thanks.
The only last 2 things I have is, if no one's ever told you about Brumali truffles and you've been buying truffles your whole life, that's probably a problem. I would ask your current truffle person what a Brumali truffle is. And then if you want more information on counterfeit truffles, I got a whole little pictures and everything, and I can tell you exactly what to look for.
Great.
Come see us around 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone. Well, I know I've probably gotten myself in a little bit of trouble up here. I'm sorry. I wasn't looking. So it's just so much amazingness on one panel. How could we resist but go a little long? Now you have a 15-minute break, I believe, and we're going to reconvene for our next panel after that. So thank you, everyone.